The Ministry of Timelines bears no official responsibility for the content of this research. The Accords Council has displayed remarkable flexibility during their ongoing dealings with alien threats. Field agents have been reported missing in the Galactic North. A Level 1 alert is now in place for all agents in this region until further notice. Humanity. The very word stands not only for the mighty and gracious race that rescued so many aliens after their homeworlds were destroyed, but it is also synonymous with the nobility of the act itself. Humans would long be remembered for their humanity during this time, and humanity would be remembered through the ages. Still, it cost a lot of credits to mount an operation of such a system-spanning scale, which left humanity little option but to immediately enslave the aliens with a form of indentured servitude so they could pay off the debt they contractually admitted they owed to mankind. Nevertheless, their hard work would be done with a smile on their faces, partly happy to have another chance of life, mostly also due to contractual obligations. Not smiling, of course, with the free thought movement, who are distinctly unhappy with this state of affairs. But then, when are those miserable bastards ever happy? At the start of 2248, the Faraway colony renegotiated their contract with the Accords. Given that so many alien homeworlds had recently exploded, they no longer felt an obligation to provide military protection as a bulwark against the hordes of aliens in the galaxy, particularly as all of the economic migrants look to be so happy working for the humans. Relieved of this burden, the finest minds of Faraway would be devoted to expanding the boundaries of human technology and science, devoting their time to a Stellarium. Martian terrorists attacked alloy foundries across human space a month later. It would prove a blow against the future military capabilities of the Accords. Expanding their interest to the other side of the recently discovered wormhole, in the middle of 2248 the Accords and Faraway initiated diplomatic talks with the largest power block on that side of the galaxy. The Blom, a mushroom-like fungal race, were content merely to be chill with humanity, leading to the Faraway delegate offering them pizza. When the Blom showed a preference instead for exotic gases, the delegate changed the order to add pineapple to the pizza, saying that was their best way to get gassy. Negotiations broke down briefly as the Blom tried to explain they needed very specific foods to get very specific gases for some sort of huffing ritual. They were very keen on smelling their own farts. Before the negotiations broke down entirely when the Blom leader died. The Blom blamed the Accords for the death, and for cutting up the corpse and adding it to the pizza, which I'm told was very tasty. As a bargaining chip to stop the violence, the Martian people were offered a full seat on the Accords Council a year later in 2249. This signalled an end to the martial law on Mars, which was replaced by Martian law. No one really saw a difference. Outrage rocked a low-level Accords meeting in 2250 when the Faraway colony sent a representative of Oclaran heritage. Faraway claimed it was an accident, a mere oversight, and that the Oclaran could perform their duties just as well as any human, which only incited Mars all the more. Mars then challenged the very status of the Faraway colony, making the claim that they should no longer be granted human rights. The Oclaran was quickly and quietly dismissed to smooth over the diplomatic faux pas, and sent back to work off his indentured servitude breaking rocks in a quarry for 12 hours a day. Still, he seemed happy about it, at least to a contractually obliged level. The Blom formed a non-aggression pact with the Pharyngian Assembly, a race of psychic tree people, in 2251. How lovely and peaceful. Except it wasn't, and instead was the manifestation of humanity's worst fear. The aliens were uniting. Far Away tried to bring this terrible and possibly unlawfully democratic state of affairs to the attention of the Accords Council, but were woefully ignored. Despite their indifference to trees and fungi deciding not to fight amongst themselves, the Accords bowed to Martian demands and removed more rights from aliens. Both reproductive and migration rights were removed, with Mars making the point that these were human rights for humans and that if they didn't like them, they should go back to where they came from. Earth stopped anyone pointing out the hypocrisy, just in case the Martians took their own advice. 2254. Negotiations between the Accords and the Pharyngian Assembly got off to a rough start, almost certainly having nothing to do with the stripping of their rights. One diplomat expressed awkwardness at trees talking being wild enough a prospect without them communicating psychically. A Pharyngian delegate then wondered aloud how meat covered in skin sacks flapping various orifices around to make noises could possibly be considered civilized, and the point was taken. Once the issue of communications had been settled, a non-aggression pact was proposed, as well as the sharing of sensor information, both of which would need to be ratified by the full Accords Council. The Bloms taking exception to the stripping of alien rights within Accords space caused diplomatic relations to deteriorate in 2255. Beholden to Mars, the Accords refused to relent, and kept the perfectly sensible restrictions in place. The Accords Council met later that year to ratify the non-aggression pact policy and sharing of sensor information with the Pharyngian Assembly. The vote was split, 3-3. Councilman Woodman of the USR held the tie-breaking vote, but failed to make a decision before the faraway diplomats left for their tea. It was fish fingers, who can blame them? Far Away met rock people in 2257. Despite having already dealt with mushrooms and psychic trees, it still came as something of a surprise to find out rocks could be people. Even so, a deal between Far Away and the communal state of rock went ahead, and Far Away opened an account with Sediment Express, thinking they were ordering some furniture for delivery, but in a hilarious misunderstanding, instead had agreed to a migration treaty. It was pretty awkward when the furniture turned out to be sapient, which was found out about a week later. When asked why they hadn't said anything for the first few days, the rock people said they had quite enjoyed people sitting on their faces. This is why we can't have nice things. Mars voted in 2257 to fund the organisation the Martian Patriots, who immediately went on to terrorise the Blom and Pharyngian planets, in accordance with their charter. Who could have known that an organisation with Patriot in their name would be so deeply xenophobic and hostile to outsiders? The Blom caught a Martian and held them captive, in the leading diplomatic incident of 2258, wanting exotic gases in return, which they said they were definitely not huffing, not being addicted to them in any way. The Accords accused the Blom of ransoming the citizen and said in no uncertain terms that they did not negotiate with terrorists. Without a trace of irony, the Accords turned to Mars and told them to sort out the hostage problem themselves, despite Far Away pledging to free the captive in an easy operation that it would involve minimal civilian casualties. Instead, Mars cut a bloody path that meandered really quite unnecessarily through the Blom capital to secure the hostages' release. The Blom were less than thrilled. Those who were still alive anyway. Far Away then attempted negotiations with the Blom in 2262, which deteriorated when the Blom were not convinced to eject the prophets of Nur from their sphere of influence. What Far Away saw as a cannibalistic starfish-looking creature that engaged in ritual sacrifice, the Blom merely saw as the youthful antics of a spirited group. And the Blom did like fun guys after all. Far Away's negotiations further backfired when the Accords found out they were doing so without their assent. The Accords stamped down hard on the rights of Far Away, stripping them of their diplomatic rights and demanding that ambassadors were forcefully chained to their desks to prevent them engaging in any more talks with aliens. The Martian Patriots continued to send their Legion of Mars out to work throughout the galaxy in 2265, meaning they were still attacking alien planets as part of their ongoing terrorist actions. Councillor Woodman suggested Mars could be turned into a tomb world as punishment for their terrorist affiliations. When Mars found out, they said the planet would still show more signs of life than Councillor Woodman's underpants. It's good to see politics hasn't changed much in the last 300 years. In more benign news, Accords colonies were thriving all across the Empire in 2267. One of the best examples was Dr. Manley's Rest, named after the ancestor of a high-profile agent of the Accords who lived 300 years previously. The Accords then demanded Far Away remove Xeno rights in 2269. When Far Away respectfully declined, the Accords punitively changed the terms of their agreement, almost bankrupting them. As the Accords took the carbonite-encased economy back to their home system, they were heard to say, "Pray we don't alter it any further." The Pharyngian Assembly joined in a federation with the Blom in 2270, shortly after the Blom finished the assimilation of another empire. Did I say assimilation? The Blom called it integration, claiming that they, totally wanted us to be in charge anyway, The great industrial complex that was now Earth suffered a calamity in 2272, as overexploitation of resources combined with a laissez-faire approach to pollution control finally killed most plant life on the planet. It became a tomb world. Councillor Woodman admitted that perhaps they should have stayed on top of things a bit better, but nearly couldn't be overheard from all the laughter coming from Mars. More laughter from Mars as the Pharyngians demanded restitutions for the terrorist attacks on their colonies. The Accords promised to pay, but had their fingers crossed behind their backs. And when in 2274, magnate D. Arlek called for further violence to safeguard humanity, Mars was positively rolling around on its long axis with laughter, saying it was going to pee its polar ice caps if they weren't careful. A point not lost on the Accords diplomats of Earth, who no longer had polar ice caps. The Blom continued its assimilation plans in 2267, as they began to integrate the Poppy trade ring into their empire. Poppy did not deserve it. The Accords told Mars to stop it in 2277, in what they considered to be a rather stern tone of voice as the terrorist attacks continued on foreign soil. The triggering incident was the attack on a key Blom industrial world, where many vital factories were destroyed. The official reply from Mars was "akakak, akakakakak," as they continued shooting. A video of the attack went viral on Facebook, trademark pending, which at least distracted from how the Accords still hadn't paid the exotic gases requested for earlier acts of terrorism. The world Squirtonia was in the process of colonization in 2277, a noble name for a planet and not the least bit silly. The Blom developed lava lamps in 2278, with the novel idea of putting actual lava in them. These quickly became popular gifts with foreign ambassadors. Mars attacked Blom outposts later in the year, destroying 3 space stations outright. The Blom's renowned capacity for remaining chill was being thoroughly tested, as was the Accords, who were possibly about to fight the entire galaxy. The galaxy woke up a little too early in 2279 and was unfortunately subjected to a commercial from the communal state of rock. You know the ones. It went on for what seemed like 3 months and had that annoying, quick-talking voice that was meant to sound soothing but just made you regret having got out of bed before April, as it kept repeating the same 3 facts again and again in slightly different ways, repeating itself over and over, saying not quite the same thing but close enough, speeding through the words so that you couldn't quite notice that you've heard the same thing 3 times already and come out the other end not quite sure what you had just listened to. Something was for sale. Maybe. Fearful of future wars with the Blom, among various other threats, Faraway looked for an injection of money in 2280 to update and re-equip their outdated military. They turned to Mars, which was only too grateful to offer a heavy loan to meet all Faraway's needs, in a deal that almost certainly had zero strings attached and no long-term consequences. Pirates appeared in the Gozam system in 2280. The Accords reached a deal with the notorious Walpole, leader of the pirate faction, allowing them to stay in the same system as private defense contractors, as long as they helped to defend that system. The pirates agreed, but preferred a rather loose meaning of defending the system. That included attacking the ships friendly to the Accords, as well as to those local to the system. Accords HQ patted themselves on the back for another job well done. The Accords uncovered a Legion of Mars plot to destroy Blom gas factories in 2282. After debating for over a year on whether or not to warn them, the Accords decided that they couldn't be bothered. A year later, several gas refineries were destroyed in Blom space. The Accords were shocked and horrified. They updated their Spacebook profile to include the national Blom flag in a show of solidarity, and set their status to "No one could have predicted such an atrocity," garnering thousands of virtual signalling comments. Thankfully, this also swamped out a message from the Blom asking about the still missing reparations and possible retributory action against Mars. The Blom called Faraway fools in 2285, prompting Mars to reconsider their stance and embrace the colony of Faraway as human. Their capricious approach to political diplomacy aside, Mars demanded the Accords retaliate against the Blom for their direct insults against humanity. Without waiting for an answer, Mars went ahead and attacked the Blom anyway, this time for the cause of human freedom. The skirmishes turned into an all-out war in 2288, over a border dispute with the Blom, concerning the ownership of both ends of the wormhole. Something about the curvature of space meant that technically the wormhole was closer to the human end, meaning the star that was thought to be in Blom space actually instead existed in human space. Look, I don't know, take it up with the gas-huffing scientists who worked all this out. Either way, Mars was overjoyed at the news, not that it changed their current strategy of attacking the Blom at every opportunity. Faraway, however, was confused, as the Accords did not call on them or their newly refurbished military, possibly because their fleet of heavily armed stealth frigates were nowhere to be seen. Sadly for the Martians, there was only one major engagement in the whole war, in which the human fleets proved their mettle by annihilating the ragtag, ramshackle and cobbled together Blom forces. A ceasefire was then hastily agreed, the humiliated Blom having little option but to concede the dubious human claim was indeed correct. The Blom had, by this point, very much lost their chill. This concludes our analysis of humanity's introduction to the Galactic Community in this timeline. Please refer to the next chapter of this report for further details on the Accords timeline.